A Clockwork Orange. This film, directed by Stanley Kubrick and released in 1971, was adapted from Anthony Burgess's 1962 novel and quickly became one of the most controversial movies ever made. Its graphic depictions of violence, sexual assault, and psychological manipulation triggered strong responses worldwide. In the United Kingdom, the British Board of Film Classification did not officially ban it, but Kubrick requested its withdrawal in 1973 following threats made against his family, leading to a de facto ban that lasted until 2000. Ireland imposed a full ban from 1973 to 1999, while Singapore still prohibits the film entirely. South Korea banned it until 2001, and in Canada, specific provinces like Alberta and Nova Scotia refused to classify or screen it. In the United States, it initially received an X rating, restricting its release until it was edited for an R rating. Legal authorities and religious groups expressed concern over its potential influence on real-life violence, especially after it was cited in several criminal cases. The movie was also unavailable on home video in many countries for decades, further limiting access. Even in places where it was not outright banned, such as France and Italy, it was rated strictly for adults or temporarily pulled from circulation. In Australia, it was originally given an R rating, then re-rated several times as standards changed. The film's striking use of classical music alongside violent imagery intensified its impact and fueled debates over whether art could inspire crime. Over time, its availability has increased, but its legacy is still marked by these bans and restrictions, making it a case study in global film censorship. Despite all this, the film has remained a frequent subject in academic discussions in film history, not only for its content, but also for the real-world reactions it sparked across decades and continents. The Exorcist. Directed by William Friedkin and released in 1973, The Exorcist became one of the most iconic and controversial horror films ever made, prompting bans and censorship across several countries due to its intense depictions of demonic possession, religious themes, and disturbing imagery. In the United Kingdom, it was passed with an X rating for theaters, but when it was released on VHS, the British Board of Film Classification refused to classify it for home video, effectively banning it from home release from 1984 to 1999 under the Video Recordings Act. Ireland went even further, banning it entirely from cinemas and home video for over a decade. In Singapore, the film was banned for 25 years and only became accessible with an R21 rating in 2008. Malaysia and parts of the Middle East refused to allow screenings due to its religious content, and it was heavily censored in countries like Germany and Sweden, where specific scenes were cut or re-rated over time. The backlash came largely from religious organizations and parents who felt the film's portrayal of satanic rituals and child possession was blasphemous and dangerous. There were reports of fainting, vomiting, and even heart attacks during screenings, contributing to its reputation and moral panic. Some claimed the film encouraged satanic panic, while others labeled it psychologically damaging. In the United States, the original version received an R rating, but controversy still led to protests outside theaters. When the uncut version, often referred to as the version you've never seen, was released in 2000, additional scenes triggered renewed debate, especially the spider walk sequence. Despite the uproar, the film received 10 Academy Award nominations and won 2, including Best Adapted Screenplay. Over the years, many of the bans have been lifted, but it remains restricted in some regions even today. Its cultural impact and the reactions it caused make it one of the most studied examples of horror censorship in film history, showing how religious sensitivity and fear of moral corruption can collide with artistic expression on a global scale. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to start posting a lot here. Thanks. Anyways, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Directed by Tobe Hooper and released in 1974, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre faced widespread censorship and bans across the world due to its intense depiction of violence, psychological terror, and perceived obscenity, even though the film shows very little blood. In the United Kingdom, the British Board of Film Classification refused to grant it a certificate for theatrical release, citing its disturbing tone and relentless atmosphere. It was effectively banned in the United Kingdom until 1999, when it was finally passed uncut with an 18 rating. Ireland banned it outright for over 2 decades. In Australia, it was refused classification in several states and remained unavailable until edited versions were approved years later. Germany initially banned the film under their youth protection laws and maintained restrictions until 2011, when it was finally allowed uncut. Norway, Finland, and Iceland all denied the film theatrical or home video release for extended periods. The controversy surrounded not just the visuals, but also the overwhelming sense of dread and cruelty, especially especially in how it portrayed Leatherface and the cannibalistic family dynamic. In the United States, despite having no official ban, the film was dropped by several theater chains and pulled from screens in various cities following public complaints. Canada had a split response, with provinces like Ontario allowing a release while others like British Columbia denied it classification. Critics argued over whether the film was a work of exploitation or a disturbing piece of artistic horror, while moral watchdogs and parent groups lobbied to keep it out of reach. Even without graphic gore, the relentless pacing, chaotic sound design, and nihilistic tone made it one of the most notorious banned films of the decade. It became a lightning rod in the debate over censorship, horror cinema, and the limits of acceptability. Over the years, most bans were lifted, but its legacy as one of the most banned horror films in history remains solid, and its path to global distribution reveals how cultural standards and fear of societal decay shaped film regulation during the 1970s and beyond. The Last Temptation of Christ. Directed by Martin Scorsese and released in 1988, The Last Temptation of Christ faced widespread bans and protests due to its fictionalized portrayal of Jesus and its exploration of his human desires, including a controversial dream sequence involving marriage and intimacy. Based on the novel by Nikos Kazantzakis, the film was condemned by numerous religious groups before it even hit theaters. In the United States, it sparked massive protests from Christian organizations who accused it of blasphemy, with picket lines, boycotts, and even bomb threats targeting cinemas. The film was banned outright in countries like Turkey, Greece, Mexico, Chile, Argentina, the Philippines, and Singapore, many of which cited religious sensitivity and public morality concerns. In South Africa, the film was initially banned before later being released with a restrictive rating. In France, protests turned violent, including a firebomb attack on a Paris theater that injured 13 people. In the United Kingdom, the film was given an 18 certificate by the British Board of Film Classification, but numerous local councils refused to screen it. Blockbuster Video refused to carry the film in their stores nationwide, despite it being legally available. The controversy stemmed primarily from the suggestion that Jesus struggled with temptation in a deeply human way, which many interpreted as sacrilegious. Scorsese emphasized that the film was not a literal adaptation of the Gospels, but rather a fictional exploration of spiritual conflict, yet the outrage persisted globally. Brazil's Catholic Church successfully pressured theaters to cancel screenings. In India, the film was banned by the central government after protests erupted in several cities. Japan released the film without issue, but other Asian countries, including Malaysia, never approved it for release. The Vatican officially condemned the film, and several prominent religious figures denounced both Scorsese and Universal Pictures. Despite the backlash, the film received critical acclaim for its direction and screenplay, and earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Director. The global controversy surrounding the film made it one of the most heavily protested and banned religious dramas of the 20th century, a symbol of the ongoing clash between creative freedom and religious doctrine. The Interview. Directed by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg and released in 2014, The Interview became one of the most politically controversial films of the 21st century due to its satirical depiction of North Korea and the fictional assassination plot against its leader, Kim Jong-un. The film, produced by Columbia Pictures and distributed by Sony, triggered a massive international incident before its release. In November 2014, a group calling itself the Guardians of Peace hacked Sony Pictures, leaking thousands of emails, scripts, and confidential data in response to the film's content. The United States government later officially blamed North Korea for the cyber attack, escalating diplomatic tensions. After the hackers threatened violence against theaters showing the film, all major American cinema chains pulled it from their schedules, and Sony initially canceled the release entirely. This marked one of the rare instances in modern film history where a major studio withdrew a film due to threats of terrorism. The film was later released through digital platforms and in limited independent theaters starting on December 24th, 2014. It was never officially banned by the United States government, but it was blocked from theatrical release in multiple countries. North Korea condemned the film as an act of war and reportedly filed a complaint with the United Nations, calling it an act of terrorism. China banned the film and restricted coverage of the incident in state media. Russia also criticized the film and expressed concern over its implications. In South Korea, the film was never released in theaters due to fears of damaging inter-Korean relations, despite no official ban. Other countries like Vietnam and Kazakhstan refused to allow the film to be screened domestically. The incident prompted major discussions about freedom of expression, cybersecurity, and Hollywood's global influence. The film itself, a political comedy with crude humor, became a lightning rod for international debate, not because of its content alone, but because of the unprecedented reaction it provoked from a foreign government and the global security concerns it sparked throughout the entertainment industry. Cannibal Holocaust. Directed by Ruggero Deodato and released in 1980, Cannibal Holocaust is one of the most banned, censored, and controversial films ever ever made due to its extreme violence, graphic sexual content, and the use of real animal killings on screen. The film follows a group of American filmmakers who travel to the Amazon and are later revealed to have staged atrocities against indigenous people for shock value, only to meet a brutal end themselves. Upon its release in Italy, it was seized by authorities 10 days after premiering, and Deodato was arrested on obscenity charges. Adding to the chaos, he was also charged with murder, as the film's found footage style was so convincing that prosecutors believed actors had actually been killed. Deodato had to present the cast in court and show behind-the-scenes footage to prove they were alive. While he was eventually acquitted of murder, he still faced charges related to animal cruelty due to the real on-camera deaths of several animals, including a turtle, a monkey, a pig, and others. The film was banned in Italy until 1984 and has since been re-released with warnings and cuts. In the United Kingdom, it was denied classification and listed as a video nasty, making it illegal to distribute from 1983 until 2001, when it was released with over 6 minutes of cuts. An uncut version was finally approved in 2011. In Australia, the film was banned and remains restricted in multiple states. New Zealand and Norway maintained bans for years, and it is still prohibited in some countries due to its depiction of sexual violence, real animal cruelty, and racist imagery. In the United States, it was never officially banned, but many theaters refused to screen it, and some states imposed local restrictions. Canada's response varied by province, with several outright banning it. Over time, it has been reevaluated as a critique of Western exploitation and media sensationalism, but it remains one of the most infamous examples of extreme cinema, studied as much for its legal history as for its actual content. Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom. Directed by Pier Paolo Pasolini and released in 1975, Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom, is one of the most banned and censored films of all time due to its brutal depictions of sadism, sexual violence, and fascist cruelty. Loosely based on the Marquise de Sade's novel and set in Nazi-occupied Italy, the film follows 4 wealthy men who kidnap teenagers and subject them to systematic abuse, humiliation, and torture. Upon its release in Italy, authorities immediately seized the film, and Pasolini faced legal charges for obscenity and corrupting public morals. Though cleared later, the film's content sparked outrage from religious institutions, politicians, and cultural critics. It was banned in Australia, where it remained prohibited in most territories until the early 2000s. In the United Kingdom, it was denied classification by the British Board of Film Classification and was unavailable legally until 2000, when it was finally released uncut with an 18 rating. Ireland refused to screen or distribute it for decades. In New Zealand, it was banned until 2001 and is still heavily restricted. Norway, Finland, and Iceland either banned or severely limited its circulation. In the United States, it was never federally banned, but customs officials frequently seized imported copies, and multiple cities blocked screenings or revoked permits. Canada had inconsistent regulations, with some provinces banning it outright and others allowing censored versions. France allowed the film but saw violent protests, including arson attacks at cinemas showing it. The film's reputation grew darker when Pasolini was murdered shortly before its release, leading some to link his death with the film's political and social commentary. Salo was also pulled from television broadcast schedules and blacklisted by numerous video rental stores around the world. Its use of non-professional actors and realistic effects only intensified its infamy. Though later embraced by some film scholars as a critique of authoritarianism and unchecked power, the film remains a flashpoint for debates about artistic limits, censorship, and the ethics of extreme content in cinema. Persepolis. Directed by Marjane Satrapi and Vincent Perronod and released in 2007, Persepolis is an animated film based on Satrapi's autobiographical graphic novel about growing up during and after the Iranian Revolution. While critically acclaimed and nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, the film was banned or restricted in several countries due to its political and religious themes. In Iran, the film was never officially released and was immediately condemned by authorities who accused it of presenting a negative image of the Islamic Revolution and distorting Iranian history. Iranian state media criticized it for promoting Western values and undermining Islamic beliefs, and the government filed formal complaints when it was screened at international festivals. In Lebanon, the film was initially banned by the General Security Agency due to pressure from Hezbollah and religious groups who objected to its portrayal of God and critical stance on Iran's clerical rule. After public backlash and protests from intellectuals and film advocates, the ban was overturned and the film was allowed to screen with an age restriction. Tunisia also banned the film temporarily in 2017 after it aired on television during Ramadan. Ramadan, sparking outrage among conservative groups who deemed it offensive to Islam, particularly due to its abstract depiction of God. The broadcast led to legal action against the TV station, and protesters accused it of blasphemy. In other countries, including Egypt and Jordan, the film was subject to delayed releases or quiet censorship due to its political sensitivity. Despite the bans, Persepolis received widespread acclaim for its bold storytelling and minimalist black and white animation style. France, where Saint-Tropez is based, embraced the film, and it won the jury prize at the Cannes Film Festival. The censorship it faced highlighted the tension between freedom of expression and religious or political authority in various parts of the world. While it was never banned in Western nations, it continued to face challenges in regions with strict blasphemy and censorship laws, making it one of the most notable modern examples of politically controversial animated cinema. The Da Vinci Code. Directed by Ron Howard and released in 2006, the Da Vinci Code faced international controversy and multiple bans due to its fictional narrative suggesting that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene and that the Catholic Church had concealed this truth. Based on the best-selling novel by Dan Brown, the film was immediately condemned by the Vatican and various Christian organizations for promoting what they considered heretical ideas and distorting religious history. In Lebanon, the film was banned outright following pressure from Christian authorities who claimed it offended Christian beliefs. The Lebanese General Security Office pulled the film just days before its planned release, and the ban has remained in place since. In Egypt, the film was shown briefly before being pulled from theaters after Christian groups filed complaints. The Coptic Christian Church demanded a permanent ban, calling the film blasphemous and harmful to religious unity. Jordan also banned the film, citing concerns over offending religious sentiment. In India, protests erupted across several cities, and although the film was eventually released, it carried a disclaimer and faced state-level bans in Goa and parts of northeastern India. In Pakistan and Sri Lanka, Christian groups petitioned for censorship, with Sri Lanka ultimately banning the film after local bishops voiced strong opposition. The Philippines allowed its release, but with a restrictive R18 rating and prominent disclaimers added to the beginning of screenings. China permitted the film to release, but pulled it from theaters just 2 weeks later without explanation, despite strong box office numbers. Vatican officials denounced the film repeatedly and urged Christians to boycott it. Despite the backlash, the film was commercially successful, grossing over $750 million worldwide. The controversy intensified academic and theological debates, and several religious scholars publicly challenged the film's claims. In some countries like Russia and Greece, church leaders urged the faithful to avoid the film, but no official bans were enforced. The film's global reception reflected sharp divisions over religious sensitivity, free expression, and the influence of popular media on public perceptions of sacred history. Pink Flamingos. Directed by John Waters and released in 1972, Pink Flamingos became one of the most notorious underground films ever made, banned in multiple countries due to its extreme content, including scenes of incest, bestiality, cannibalism, and coprophagia. Marketed as an exercise in deliberate bad taste, the film follows a competition for the title of filthiest person alive, and Waters intentionally pushed every boundary of censorship and decency. Upon release, the film was met with outrage from censors, critics, and religious groups. In Australia, it was banned outright and remained prohibited in several states for decades. The British Board of Film Classification refused to classify it for home release and only approved it with heavy cuts in the 1980s, later releasing it uncut in 2008. Canada saw province-specific bans, with Nova Scotia and Ontario refusing to screen or distribute the film for years. In Switzerland and Norway, the film was denied distribution entirely. New Zealand banned it on the grounds of sexual perversion, and it remained restricted long after its cult status was established. In the United States, the film avoided a federal ban, but was subject to local crackdowns, including police raids on midnight screenings in conservative cities. Despite this, it developed a massive cult following and helped define the midnight movie phenomenon of the 1970s. The film's notoriety was further cemented by its use of real unsimulated acts, particularly the infamous closing scene, which drew condemnation and praise in equal measure. Pink Flamingos was rejected by mainstream critics but championed by subversive filmmakers and alternative art circles. Many considered it an attack on traditional morality and a celebration of radical freedom. Waters defended the film as a satire of American culture, consumerism, and hypocrisy, but it remained controversial for its shock value alone. To this day, it's either banned or heavily restricted in several countries and is rarely screened without a warning or age restriction. Its legacy is built on pushing the absolute limits of film censorship and establishing John Waters as a pioneer of transgressive cinema, making it one of the most persistently banned films in modern history. Brokeback Mountain. Directed by Ong Lee and released in 2005, Brokeback Mountain faced bans, censorship, and restrictions in several countries due to its depiction of a romantic relationship between two men, which was considered controversial in regions with strong anti-LGBTQ+ sentiment. While the film received critical acclaim and won 3 Academy Awards, including Best Director, it was banned outright in countries like China, where authorities cited moral concerns and refused to allow a theatrical release despite it being a co-production with Canadian and American companies. In the Middle East, it faced widespread bans across countries including the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Iran, where homosexuality is criminalized and media content is strictly censored. Malaysia and Indonesia also banned the film, calling it inappropriate for public viewing due to cultural and religious standards. In the Caribbean, the film was pulled from a major cinema chain in the Cayman Islands, where homosexuality was still criminalized at the time. In the United States, while the film was never banned, certain theater chains in conservative areas refused to carry it, and there were scattered reports of local boycotts or political pressure on smaller cinemas. In Italy, a regional broadcaster censored the film's intimate scenes when airing it on television, which drew criticism from LGBTQ+ rights groups and sparked debate about media discrimination. In Russia, though not officially banned, it was never widely distributed, and the film's content would later fall under the country's anti-LGBTQ+ propaganda laws passed in the following years. Singapore allowed the film with an R21 rating, but heavily warned audiences of its content. Despite these challenges, Brokeback Mountain broke ground globally, not just for its storytelling, but for the intense backlash it received. Its international reception highlighted the uneven global acceptance of LGBTQ+ themes in cinema, and the bounds it faced revealed how cultural, religious, and legal frameworks shaped media access. Over time, the film has been recognized for its impact on queer representation in mainstream cinema, though its restricted or prohibited status in several countries remains unchanged. Blue is the warmest color. Directed by Abdelatif Kechiche and released in 2013, Blue is the warmest color was met with both critical acclaim and international controversy due to its explicit sexual content and depiction of a same-sex relationship between two young women. The film won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, with the award uniquely shared between the director and the 2 lead actresses, but its release was heavily restricted or banned in several countries. In Tunisia, the film was banned outright due to its lesbian themes and graphic scenes, which authorities deemed incompatible with public morality. In Lebanon, the film faced calls for a ban and was pulled from certain cinemas after religious groups protested its content. Russia refused to distribute the film widely, citing its so-called gay propaganda laws, which criminalized the promotion of non-heteronormative relationships to minors. In Singapore, it was banned entirely due to what censors called prolonged and explicit sexual content. The film was also rated NC-17 in the United States by the Motion Picture Association, which significantly limited its commercial distribution and advertising options. In Australia, the film was given an R18 rating, but faced scrutiny from parent and religious groups who argued it should be banned. In Italy and Spain, the film was released uncut, but sparked a debate over whether it should have stricter age limits. France, where the film was produced, allowed its release with a 12+ rating, which led to public backlash from child protection advocates who claimed the rating was too lenient. Critics and LGBT organizations were divided on the film's portrayal of queer intimacy, with some praising its raw emotional depth, while others criticized the director's male gaze and the treatment of the actresses during production. Despite the controversies, the film found global attention and sparked debates over censorship, representation, and the distinction between art and exploitation. It remains banned or restricted in several regions, particularly where laws against LGBTQ+ content and sexual explicitness overlap, making it one of the most debated LGBTQ+ films of the 21st century. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.